Hi, folks. This is Dave with the That's God podcast. I just want to let you know that my second interview with Graham Kerr is a part 2A and a part 2B. You're about to watch part 2B. So if you haven't seen 2A yet, I highly suggest you go watch that one first, as it provides a lot of context into what you're about to watch. So I also want to let you know that there are some technical difficulties in part 2B and the video part. Had some new equipment and high learning curve, things like that. So I apologize for that. The audio is great, so you can certainly follow along, but there's a couple gaffes in there with some video things. So anyway, I apologize, but I think we got them all worked out. So part 3 and on should be good to go. Anyway, please enjoy. Yeah, very good.
Okay.
Well, so now we're in the late 60s.
Yes.
And this company called the Fremantle of Canada comes knocking at your door and says, you're going to be bigger than you can even imagine. And have we got a contract for you?
650 shows.
Yeah.
A $2 million assessment contract at that stage. At the same time that Treena was feeding quarters into a slot machine in the American embassy where we were meeting, and she actually got all these quarters as I was signing this contract for $2 million.
Yeah. It's like playing the penny slots while you have $1 million over here.
Well, we decided that we were going to do this. We had to do it because they'd come and repossessed my kitchen equipment from my home. I'd broken with my management. I couldn't tolerate it. I couldn't tolerate being a slave to a system anymore. I hated it. And I was buying myself out at $10,000 a month, and I had to get $250,000 across to him to buy myself out of the contract.
My goodness. Wow.
And I set up, I mortgaged our house and everything else in it, everything in our lives. We made an Italian series which went nowhere. And they came and pulled the fridge out and the stovetop, and I was cooking on a primus stove in our home. Wow. And I didn't know what to do, really. And this guy turns up and with this 650. I knew I couldn't do 650. 195 news shows, and the most I'd ever done was 39, and that was stripping me. I was giving it everything.
Yeah.
I didn't have the ability to do it. But he said, "If you got 65 shows," I said, "Yes." They said, "Well, let's do those. It's like Australia, and then we'll see whether it works or not." And it was almost exactly what happened in Australia. The show started in New York City, and it was distributed by J. Walter Thompson, the largest ad agency in the world.
Yeah.
Were doing this distribution, and they bartered me. They said, "You take this program, and we'll give you X amount of sponsorship for it. We'll buy time. You don't have to pay us a penny. We'll give you the program."
Wow.
And we'll get time back from you for doing that.
Yeah.
And that started in New York at 12 noon in NBC, and within the recording period of the second series, within the 6 weeks of that, it had reached every single, in distribution, every single city in the United States. So the program started in New York City. I'm going to say it was December of 68. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And I didn't expect it. to do very well. And I didn't, in their first series, I did not jump over a chair with a glass of wine.
Okay.
That happened in series 2.
Okay.
So the first 65 shows were recorded on the basis of 2 on Monday, 3 on Tuesday, 2 on Wednesday, that's it. Until in 6 weeks, we'd done 65 shows. That's a huge amount of thing with a live audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we came up, Treena and I, on our own, and our children were in boarding school back in New Zealand and Australia.
While you had moved out here, your kids were back in a boarding school. Okay.
Yes. When that first series hit and then went as wide as it did, and then started to go internationally as well, it was very clear that I didn't have any more programs done. So on the way up to Canada from Australia, we stopped off at a number of restaurants that were famous and would give us their recipes.
Yeah.
And so I was then going to famous places and getting enough of my reputation was now starting, and Life magazine did a piece and Time as well, and it was all over the place. And so then nations would start getting in touch. Can you come here and visit this? So we would cluster our way to Canada and then cluster our way back to Australia again. With, places. I look back upon this time and I am actually incredulous that we were able to do it. We just lost sight of our kids altogether.
Yeah.
And we went into the studios at 11 in the morning. We got back by 11 at night. And
well, in your heyday, you were doing 6 shows a day.
Monday through Friday? 3 was the maximum with one audience. Yeah.
Okay.
It was 3.
Okay.
Yeah. But we did 65 in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then a day of commercials, and then jump on a plane, and then do 6 weeks of research and around the world, and then do the test and development work on it as well. That's 19 and a half hours of my personal time, not including travel.
Yeah.
That was involved in the preparation of each one of those shows. So we crawled out on the bow of life, and the bow broke eventually with the traffic accident.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get to that.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, so that's what I wanted to ask. I knew that you were recording from like 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., or you were gone from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Yes.
Which, like you say, that leaves no time for kids.
Well, you don't see them. You leave messages for them on the fridge door.
Yeah. And so how did they respond to that? You're a big star. I'm sure you're living in a great place.
Well, we lived in a marvelous home in Rockcliffe Park in Ottawa, which used to be an embassy. And so that was our house. We dug a big hole in the garden and put a swimming pool in. The downstairs basement was converted into a test and development kitchen for me. And that's how we lived.
Yeah.
When Prime Minister Trudeau was in town, I was out somewhere filming, and then they would jokingly say, when Trudeau goes away, then Graham comes back, and between the two of them, we've got a city.
So talk about your kids a little bit. So what was their... you could have all the things. You could have all the swimming pools and a great place to live, but if mom and dad aren't around, it's got to be very hard.
Well, youngest one was just born, because she was born between series 1 and 2. Treena was pregnant with the first series that she did.
Yeah.
So we had a Karatani nurse who looked after the little one. That's a special kind of nurse in New Zealand called Karatani, and they're the best nannies in the world, shall we put it this way. And we had a wonderful woman that looked after our little one. Then there was Andy. Andy was, 7, 8, 9, and our eldest daughter was let me back. He was 12, so Tessa was 14, 15, and Andy had a tough time at school. He was in boarding school in as we started, and then came to school, and he had a tough time at school. And he was being bullied from that. And I remember giving him a baseball bat and telling him how to threaten to break their legs. And he went to school with the baseball bat and repeated it. And they left him alone after that.
Wow.
So that worked. Our oldest daughter, we were watching Lawrence of Arabia. You remember that movie? We were interrupted in that movie with a lady who came up and with a little flashlight and said, "You are Graham Kerr?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Your daughter's in hospital and you need to get there."
Oh, wow.
She'd had overdosed with drugs in order to let us know that she would like to be known.
Yeah.
In her journal, she had the wiring diagram, the basic wiring diagram to blow up my car.
Wow.
So
sakes.
You could say that our relationship was not that great.
Yeah.
I must say that she's in her mid-60s now, and we have the most wonderful relationship.
That's awesome.
Every Sunday we have.
Yeah.
Anyway, so aside from that, so we put Andy into a Quaker boarding school, and he was taking scotch from my bar in the house, and apportioning it out between his friends in the club. Which, as you can imagine, didn't go over very well.
No.
So we sorted that one out. I also remember there was quite a lot of young people of their age that were attracted to the fact that we had a swimming pool, because not everyone had.
Right.
So we had quite a lot of young adolescents. So I remember going to them and addressing them as a group and letting them know, I really love the fact that you come over and you're enjoying our pool and our family. And I just want to let you know that you're most welcome. However, if you actually bring one item of drugs into this area and this home, I will take you immediately down to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and turn you in. I won't be concerned about your parents and going to them first. I will take you first to the RCMP.
Yeah.
And you just need to know I give you my solemn promise. I think that was a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this was at the height of the summer of love and all this. It's late 60s, it's early 70s, and drugs is the thing.
It was par for the course, and I knew that it was happening, but I was not going to allow it to happen on my turf.
Yeah.
So that's it. I mean, we actually managed to do those programs, and I would have loved to have had another 10 hours of research and development to have made some of those great dishes even greater, or as great as I remember them to be at the Tour d'Argent in Paris. And my reproduction of it was not as good as I remember it. So I had this international reputation that I think had more to do with my personality than my expertise. And I so wanted to do it right and to do it really well.
Yeah.
And the first 6 minutes was atrocious for me most of the time. It was terrifyingly bad jokes that I had to tell. And then escape into my kitchen. And my kitchen was a place where I had the chance to be able to do what I wanted to do. There was tremendous tension in those.
Well, and you had a short period of time to put it all together. I know there's a lot of editing, so I'm sure the cooking show didn't take 22 minutes or whatever.
Yes.
But I'm sure it was very stressful to get that all done. But you mentioned, I remember the first part of the show started off with you telling a story.
Yes.
And lots of videos of places you have been.
Yes.
And in fact, going back to the name Galloping Gourmet, I think that started from, like you were talking about, you went all around the world to all these fantastic restaurants.
Yes.
And you did some whirlwind trip in 35 days.
Yes.
And you kind of nicknamed it.
It's exactly right.
Galloping
I
Gourmet.
and the primary wine man of Australia, Len Evans, and myself were given a round-the-world ticket, first class, on Qantas Airlines to celebrate their initial round-the-world thing.
Yeah.
And they would pay for every single thing that happened to us on the 37 days.
Wow.
So they literally poured us off the plane at the end. And that's what got my... And my friend Len wanted to call it the Galloping Gluttons. And I said, no, I think it should be Gourmets. And so we wrote a book about it. And that's what Qantas wanted. They wanted us to write the book. And it's a very fun read. And it just seemed to me like we were doing something which was out of this world. We were going to great places and meeting great people, and at no cost.
Yeah.
That has to be cool.
That's an awesome trip right there.
Yeah. That's what gave me the idea for the series.
Yeah.
And that's where the name came from.
And so I'm guessing a lot of the dishes that you did on the program came from those various restaurants.
Oh, yes. In fact, if I wanted to know how to make stroganoff, we'd go to Moscow.
Yeah.
And we'd find through the Politburo, we'd find the place where they thought it was made best.
Yeah.
And we would get the recipe from there. That's the way I set about doing it.
Yeah. So I'm sure whenever you are in a crowd of people will come up to you and they want to tell you about their favorite episode. Do you have, what are some of the things that people will tell you that they enjoy the most, or what's their favorite episode, or things that happen on the show?
Yeah. I think most people were inquisitive. What was it like to film in Russia in the middle of the Cold War? In the USSR.
Yeah.
What was that like? We had our stories about that one. Was there ever a guest that you had that didn't like when you pulled them out at the end? Did anybody ever say they didn't like it? And I said, yes, we did have one. Yeah. We had a breakdown with the camera, and the dish went sour, and she didn't like it, and I didn't like it either. So we both said so. But I think that there were some people that understood it. One of the things, I cooked a souffle with Brisbane prawns and sauteed in bourbon in layers in this cheese souffle. And to do a souffle that takes 40 minutes to cook in a 30-minute program, it has to be done to a degree beforehand.
Yeah.
And it was rupturing my normal interplay with the audience as I was having to do things that I had to do exactly right and to get it working. And the audience was passive. But the souffle was magnificent. When I spooned it out, I could scarcely believe that I had done something as well as that. It was perfect.
Yeah.
And I was waiting for Treena's A+, and it was a B.
Oh, my goodness.
I said, a B? She said, you were boring. Well, did you see the souffle? I don't care what the souffle does. You were boring.
She wants entertainment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, and that's what I would get from people. They loved the stories. They would tell me about the joke, but not about the recipe.
Yeah.
And so that was the story of my life. Was every episode had tension in it.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you my favorite story.
Yes.
So I asked you about your knife skills early on in the other podcast. And the thing that stands out in my mind is that you have an onion and you are going 1,000 miles an hour on that onion and making super thin cuts as only you can do, Yeah. But the audience realizes that you are not watching your hands at all.
Yes.
You were talking to them and you were not paying any attention to your hands at all. And the camera work was awesome because I think I remember they would look at you talking to the audience. They would go to your hands and they would look at the audience, and the audience is terrified because they realize this is probably the last Galloping Gourmet show there's ever going to be on TV because you're about to cut all your fingers off.
Yes.
But there was tension, like you said, and it was hilarious. Well done.
Yes, there was one where I had a rather fancy watch in those days, and I pulled my watch off and put it on the counter and set the timer in order to chop 2 onions for a world speed record.
Yeah.
And I was doing this and turning around, and yes, I have the ability to chop without looking. Yes, and my fingers.
Yes, I can attest. He has 10 fingers still. So
now, however, that is an unprofessional thing to do. You don't prove you're a professional by chopping that way. Mm-hmm. I was taught to chop that way by a chef in my father's hotel. But that is not the way you handle a knife properly. Mm. You handle it, the knife stays on the counter, the onion is under the blade, and it goes in and cut and forward. And you see chefs nowadays on television doing that.
Yeah.
This business is showmanship.
Yeah. Well, you were very good at it.
Thank you.
So the success of that, Galloping Gourmet, your wife Treena was nominated for 2 Daytime Emmy Awards.
Yes.
And only lost out to the Today Show, I
think?
Yes, both times?
Yeah.
That's incredible. What a feat on her behalf.
Yes. I didn't get any awards.
What's up with that?
Okay.
We could just go on and on about the Galloping Gourmet show, and there were stories after stories after stories. And one of the things that you were called during that time, you were the high priest of hedonism, if I remember right.
That's what the press, one part of the press told me.
Yeah, and which to me is like self-indulgence and pleasure and things like that.
Hedonism is the pursuit of pleasure as the uttermost goal for life.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So did you view yourself as that as well?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I knew that what we were saying to people that we were doing on the show is I will go to wherever they are doing that the best that the world does, and I will go that to get that recipe, and I will do that the best that I can do for you. That was the promise.
Yeah.
So I was looking for a neck up responsibility to food. That was the most important thing for me, neck up.
Yeah.
Senses, eye, sense, smell, everything. And if all of those things came off, yes.
Yeah.
So
Nailed it.
that's why it's the high priest of hedonism.
Yeah.
Because they has to knock that ball out of the park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was just early teens, during that time. And what I remember is just, like I said it before, there was a guy that was having fun in the kitchen, but had skills beyond skills and was putting amazing things together. But it was a guy in the kitchen, which you didn't see very much, certainly not in the 60s, and I think you paved the way of a lot of male chefs that said, hey, look, that's an attractive occupation and something that I want to go after. Look at what this guy's doing. And so
Almost all of the
to
leading chefs of the day have told me that they started that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. So I think in the last year, you started adding guests. You mentioned some guest hosts. And you had people like Tiny Tim.
Oh, yes.
Rich Little, Nipsey Russell.
Liberace was...
Liberace, yes. You had all these people coming on to cook with you. And, or were they cooking with you? I was trying to go back in my memory. I don't necessarily remember a lot of those shows.
No, you wouldn't. You see, that happened after the accident because I couldn't jump over a chair anymore and I couldn't stand up for longer than 20 minutes. I was partially paralyzed on one side.
Yeah.
So I did 65 shows with leading celebrities. Instead of telling the joke at the beginning and showing the movie, what I did was take one of the previously recorded programs and have them sit and watch that and comment about that between them.
Oh, okay.
What did they think about that food and everything else?
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
I did it because I was required to do it under contract, and it seemed like it was a compromise that I was able to try and do something for them. But it just didn't have what the other program had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so this is... so correct me if I'm wrong. Was it April of 1971 when the accident happened? Okay, so you and Treena are in California.
Yes.
You're taking a trip to do whatever. I don't know if
we were doing the last series of the Galloping Gourmet, 65, and it was a loop around the entire United States.
Oh, okay.
Looking at the great dishes of the world that had arrived in the United States and been changed to fit into our culture.
Yeah. Okay. So you're in California?
We're being driven by motorhome from one place all the way around.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Yep. And you get hit by
a vegetable truck.
Vegetable truck, of all things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Empty.
But it's devastating. And like you had mentioned, you are half paralyzed, and Treena has very complicated
She
injuries.
actually departed from any form of production right there and then. She said, I cannot do this. I commented to you, we crawled out on a bough of life and it broke. And that's when it broke. And she said to me, I can't do another minute of this.
Yeah.
And I really couldn't either. So we had to cancel the tour and go to the insurance companies and, and take out whatever we could.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's where we're going to leave this podcast. We're going to leave you guys in an accident.
Yes.
In California. And, you have to come back for part 3 to find out what happens from there. But this basically is the end of the Galloping Gourmet. The Galloping Gourmet
Yes,
show.
I think the way that we could end this is to say that if you ever saw that program, you would have seen me leaping over a dining room chair. Now we find out as we enter into the last of our chats together where I landed. Because I took off into the Galloping Gourmet, and we'll find out where I landed.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, stay tuned, and as Graham says, God bless.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.